Oh, Travis Wayne Goodsell. No gunshots this morning, so I went for a run. Though the new 7-Eleven was very busy, with a cop there as well. So, as Mormons, even ex-Mormons, this will be of benefit to you as well. We're supposed to study our scriptures, study the Book of Mormon. The church, however, wants us only to study what they give us, and in other words, read it, know the stories, and treat them as literal history, so that we don't see the messages within. That when we see Jesus, we treat that as the Constantine created Jesus, with the Mormon twist that Joseph Smith actually saw Jesus and not Amen, for example. And so, as the church refuses to teach you how to study scriptures, and as our school systems likewise do not teach you how to study, they likewise give you textbooks or books to read, and you're supposed to do a report on them, which you're doing an abridgment rather than an actual study of what is written. And so we go through school and go through church knowing the material, but not knowing the material. We don't know how to learn using science and the scientific process for theory development and confirmation testing. And so we get deceived in the world as well as in the church. For example, the local news often will do studies show that chocolate is bad for women but good for men. I actually heard that on Fox 13 News Utah. And when you understand that the studies are not done properly, that they're done biasedly by those who have an agenda and are working with the news to pull off their scam, as you'll often see commercials for news. Oh, let's find out about the masturbator. It switches back and forth between Fox 13 News Utah and ABC 4 News Utah, and I'm sure KUTV2 also has him on. Oh my God. You have kids watching the news during this time? Because I'm sure it's not just mommies who are watching it, and it's not for men, or it's not for women, it's for men. And the target audience is the wives staying at home watching the news during the day. Dear God. We already don't teach proper sex ed. But you can see the chaos that ensues when you don't do proper research for knowledge. So let's go over the Book of Mormon through just the first chapter, as I will go through and help you understand how to do proper research, as this in and of itself should be a whole mess or splits of time. It always pisses me off when I see that advertisement now, because that's all it is. And it's the woman who's there with the guy talking about it. Oh, this is so awesome! Is it? Is it? How many did you buy for your husband? Talk about emasculating your husband. So, we'll start with the first introduction. And not the introduction. All of the Joseph Smith stuff added in, the testimonies, the introduction, the 1981 insert about a brief explanation. No, none of that. We're going right to the Book of Mormon itself to study it. And so, the Book of Mormon, an account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from the plates of Nephi. And as you go through this, you realize that there were small plates, and then there were large plates, and then there were other plates. And so the abridgment is not just from the large plates of Nephi. And so you got to pay attention to those things. Because when an author is writing a piece of fiction, he needs to make sure that he has all of those things in check. Otherwise, if you put your warp core in one episode in a certain place on the ship, and then another episode have the warp core in another part of the ship, oh, your audience is going to catch on eventually. As in Galaxy Quest, they're going to have questions that you will not be able to answer. So you need to get your story correct. Your historical documents correct. Let's get out of here before one of them kills Guy. Wherefore, it is an abridgment of the record of the people of Nephi, and also of the Lamanites. So you need to understand that an abridgment is a summary of the plates of Nephi, as is said right up above, an account written by the hand of Mormon upon plates taken from the plates of Nephi. They define what an abridgment is for us. And so you don't want to redefine words to fit some kind of biased viewpoint or interpretation. And I also need to include that we're assuming that you've already been born and raised in the church, you've read your Book of Mormon, you've been through seminary with the Book of Mormon, you've gone to BYU having learned the Book of Mormon, you've gone on your mission talking about the Book of Mormon to others. So you already know the Book of Mormon. So we don't need to worry about you starting this as a blank slate. You know the Book of Mormon already. And so I'm trying to hope to educate you to eliminate your biases that you've been indoctrinated with all these decades. And so do not put literal history, because we don't see that here. A good fiction writer will make it seem like it's a real history. He gets all of his facts correct about the time period he's writing about. And that's what we're going to be covering, is those things that are oopsies, so that we can reveal that our biases are wrong, and we need to eliminate them if we're going to understand the truth about what the Book of Mormon actually is trying to tell us. It is written to the Lamanites, who are a remnant of the house of Israel, and also to the Jew and Gentile. Gentiles are those who are not Jews. We can Google search it if you need to. Those technically would be your Christians. Christianity spread from Jewish into Gentile cultures. Not Jewish. How did I know? And that's important to understand, because this book is purported to have been found buried in upstate New York and a little to the west. So it's the United States of America, and it's talking about Lamanites, Jews, Gentiles. Now it only says the Lamanites are a remnant of the house of Israel, and then puts in, and also to Jew and Gentile. But it is known that they too are a remnant of the house of Israel. Everybody is, technically. But again, that's another research subject to find out the origin of the house of Israel, and that's a little more complicated. That's a higher level learning. It's not as easy as you think, just because it's written in the Bible. And so, yes, there's a lot we can go through, and we can do a whole video just on that one part alone. So I'm just making you aware of things that you now have to do your research on. And as we would go through it, we find out that the Lamanites aren't just the native inhabitants of the United States before the United States became the United States. Even though Joseph Smith would talk about this, as well as others would talk about the Lamanites being the native inhabitants, because there's other things that indicate it's not them. But again, higher level learning. And so it is important to identify that these are all descendants of the house of Israel being talked about. That is the main point to get out of this. New Israelites, shall we say. Written by way of commandment, and also by the spirit of prophecy and of revelation. So this was a commandment to be written, but it's also prophetic and revelatory. There are revelations in here. There are prophecies in here. Written and sealed up and hid up unto the Lord, that it might not be destroyed, to come forth by the gift and power of God. Rock and a hat, huh? Again, there is no mention of a rock and a hat. Don't impose it in here to change it unto the interpretation thereof, sealed by the hand of Moroni, and hid up unto the Lord to come forth in due time by way of the Gentile. A Christian, not a Jew. The interpretation thereof by the gift of God. An abridgment taken from the book of Ether also. And so, as we know, it came forth in due time by the way of Joseph Smith. Which Christian church did he belong to? He says he didn't join any of them. What about Vermont? New Israelites. You see how my research has given me insight, where you guys have stuck with what the church gave you to study, and you don't know those things. An abridgment taken from the book of Ether also, which is a record of the people of Jared, who were scattered at the time the Lord confounded the language of the people when they were building a tower to get to heaven, which is to show unto the remnant of the house of Israel what great things the Lord hath done for their fathers. They do not put Babel on, do they? The Tower of Babel. They just say that they were building a tower to get to heaven. And go to Ether. You can see again for yourself. Only Bruce R. McConkie puts in the chapter heading, a Tower of Babel. Oops, Bruce. But there is significance to this when you understand that Joseph Smith was constantly trying to rewrite the Bible, both Old and New Testaments. And so the book of Ether helps with rewriting the tower portion that's in the Bible, as the book of Abraham also helps to rewrite it, as Joseph Smith takes us away from Ur of Babylon around 600 BCE to put it in a previous time frame in Egypt. And Mormons missed that as well. And so as they talk about things from the Bible, you now have to understand that there's a correction going on despite plagiarism going on. Which is to show unto the remnant of the house of Israel, which is the Lamanites, as well as Jew and Gentile, what great things the Lord hath done for their fathers, and that they may know the covenants of the Lord, that they are not cast off forever. Now, if you don't understand the early settlement of America, natives were enslaved, just like blacks brought over from Africa, just like Chinese imported into America as well, specifically working on the railroads. But in order to perpetuate slavery, you have to treat human beings as subhuman. And so you can see what's being meant here by saying that the Lamanites, even Jews, and certain Christians are not cast off from the covenants of the Lord, as white supremacists have done. And so you see that there's an attempt in the Book of Mormon to show that those who are considered subhuman by white supremacy, they're equal humans as well. And despite this, as I just read to you, people like Brigham Young said, well, the Book of Mormon is a racist book, and so I'm a racist, and it's the law of God to be racist. No, you missed the point of the Book of Mormon. And also to the convincing of the Jew and Gentile that Jesus is the Christ, the eternal God. So already you now need to do your research on the learning of the Jew concerning their Christ, as well as Christians concerning their Christ. so that you can understand that what is being mentioned here is that both need to reevaluate their Christ. Even though it says Jesus. Because the Jews don't call him Jesus, they call him Emmanuel. Christians refer to the Jewish name of Christ, but call him Jesus anyway, because of the first creed of Christianity by Constantine at the Council of Nicaea, with the Nicene Creed. So when you go to your first vision, it doesn't say that Jesus, I am Jesus. Don't join Christianity. Don't start your own Christian church, claiming it's the one true Christianity. And by the way, that Trinity Jesus of Constantine is an abomination in my sight. I am the one true Jesus. Because that's what Joseph Smith was claiming, that all Christians claim to be the one true Christian church and that their Jesus is the one true Christ. That all the others are wrong. So why then would Joseph Smith join in that argument? And so when you understand the learning of the Jews as Amen, the god Amen, and you see Joseph Smith referring to Christ as the name of Amen, Adam Ondai Amen, that's supposed to bring to mind, oh, it's not really Jesus in the sense of Christian Jesus. And then we see manifesting himself unto all nations. That refers to a physical, not spiritual manifestation. That's what a manifestation is. Something that can be tangibly witnessed. Tangibly appearing. Now, the Trinity Jesus, yes, they say that, well, he's of the same essence substance. There is no word for it. It doesn't exist. But nonetheless, they say, well, he is able to transform into human, but he's not really human. He's just able to appear human, because he doesn't really need to eat. He doesn't really need to die. You know, he doesn't really die. And of course, he definitely doesn't have sex. No. He doesn't need the masturbator advertised on Utah's local news stations. God. And now if there are faults, they are the mistakes of men. And so a human Christ. Mistakes of men. Wherefore, condemn not the things of God. And see, this is an interesting twist on Christianity from the Nicene Creed. Because Constantine is a man. And he just made up Jesus. And everybody now believes him. The Gospels are now literal history instead of apocalyptic literature. Like the book of Revelation, the book of Apocalypse. And they're talking about the concept that is completely foreign to Christianity. See, the Bible was written by men. And there are those in Christianity who believe the Bible, as written in English, is inerrant. It has no mistakes. It is the Word of God, literally in its English form. And so this is saying, no, they're written by man, so there are errors that need to be corrected in not just the Book of Mormon that we're about to present to you, but also in the Bible. That we're already mentioned we're going to be correcting, talking about Ether and the tower. And you're not supposed to condemn the book just because of human error. You're supposed to understand the message that is being presented. So rather than arguing about the French word adieu, you're supposed to look beyond that to see what is the message. Why does it say brethren adieu? I'm familiar with the mystic tie, but how and Jacob, that's interesting with the mystic tie, how does this apply? Again, I'm speaking from knowledge on the subject matter. And if you are unaware of any of that, you can see how much research you have left to do. So, like I said, we're skipping all that other stuff. So, the first book of Nephi, his reign and ministry. So, yes, he does become king of the land of Nephi, the city of Nephi, where they build a temple, but they have to leave, as we find out. So we have an account of Lehi. This is also written by them. This is not Bruce R. McConkie putting this in. This is from the actual record as purported. And so they summarize the book for us. An account of Lehi, and remember this is also the 116 pages rewritten. That is also important to know. An account of Lehi and his wife Sariah, and his 4 sons being called, beginning at the eldest, Laman, Lemuel, Sam, and Nephi. Notice Nephi puts himself in this list. So when they leave, why is Nephi not listed? Because Nephi is not born yet. The Lord warns Lehi to depart out of the land of Jerusalem, because he prophesieth unto the people concerning their iniquity, and they seek to destroy his life. Now remember, we're going to be given prophecies, not just reporting about previous prophecies. There's a difference. And so, if you're thinking, well, it prophesies of Jesus coming to America. No. It's prophesying to us who are reading it. It's giving revelations to those of us who are reading it. And yes, there are prophecies in it for the characters in the book. But as we read, there are prophecies and revelations specific to us. That's why it is written to us. There are warnings to us that we need to pay attention to with this book. Let's see, because he prophesieth unto the people concerning their iniquity, they seek to destroy his life. And so that principle in and of itself, you can understand then why this is put in a book by other people who are not around to have their lives sought to be destroyed. Because if Joseph Smith said, yeah, I wrote this book, it's a warning to you guys are wicked, you're going to be destroyed, and so I'm warning you, behave, be good, like I'm doing on my YouTube channel, what then are people going to do in response to Joseph Smith? Murder him? Now, so you can understand why it's written in a book with a story of characters doing all the talking and warning, calling people wicked instead. He taketh 3 days' journey into the wilderness with his family. Nephi taketh his brethren and returneth to the land of Jerusalem. They were actually commanded after the record of the Jews. No, you blew that one. It's both the record of the Jews and of the Josephites, as they are the brass plates, which is the fulfillment of Ezekiel 37. So we all know Ezekiel 37. I already told you we already have these prerequisite knowledge involved here, and so we can see it's not just the record of the Jews. It's also got a genealogy of the descendants of Joseph. That's why Lehi knew he was from Manasseh rather than Ephraim, which is also interesting. The account of their sufferings: they take the daughters of Ishmael to wife, they take their families and depart into the wilderness. Their sufferings and afflictions in the wilderness, the course of their travels. They come to large waters. Nephi's brethren rebel against him. He confoundeth them and buildeth a ship. And so that teaches us the true doctrine of faith. They call the name of the place Bountiful, which is a different place when Jesus comes to the Americas. It's a different Bountiful there. They cross the large waters into the promised land, and so forth. This is according to the account of Nephi, or in other words, I, Nephi, wrote this record. Now remember, these are the small plates. These are not the abridgment plates. Remember, these had to be rewritten. 116 had to be rewritten. And so instead of an account of abridgment from the account of Lehi on the large plates of Nephi, which technically couldn't have been, because it's said by Moroni that Mormon abridged the plates of Nephi, not the plates of Lehi. And Nephi here is saying that I'm making an abridgment of the record of my father Lehi, and then I also make these other plates for the history of the people. So we're finding some oopsies, aren't we? They should have written out the whole structure of the book first. And this is according to the account of Nephi, or in other words, I, Nephi, wrote this record. So, the chapter heading is by Bruce R. McConkie. Eliminate that, especially the dating. I, Nephi, having been born of goodly parents. So Nephi, where do we find this word? Does it exist? Some of you ex-Mormons are going, yeah, it's from the Solomon Spalding manuscript. Manuscript found. Yeah. Where did he get it? From Maccabees. And so it is a legitimate Hebrew word. Unfortunately, it's a mistranslation from Maccabees. That's the English translation that they're using it from. And so, yes, this is one of those instances where the 1769 King James Version with the Apocrypha, with Maccabees, is in English and has it spelled Nephi rather than the actual spelling. Same with Lehi, by the way. As we've already talked about it, so I can talk about it here. Lehi is actually the Ket, which is a CH in Bach, not the H sound. It's the same as Eta in Greek, not Epsilon, which is the H. comparison with Paleo-Hebrew. But then you got to know the difference between Paleo-Hebrew and Semitic Hebrew. Semitic Hebrew is your Babylonian assimilated Hebrew, where the phonemes were transposed onto the Paleo-Hebrew script, taking it away from its match with Greek. But that is not as essential to know, because it's clear that the authors don't know this. And so, yes, if this was a translation from actual gold plates in Egyptian, it would not be spelled Nephi. It would not be spelled Lehi. We are now witnessing an anachronism. Something that was done at a later period of time and does not represent the actual time being referred to. And so it's sort of like having, we have a knowledge of when flight. Let's do when the Wright brothers find that date. Let's see. During the spring and summer of 1903, they were consumed with leaping that final hurdle into history. On December 17th, 1903, Orville and Wilbur Wright made 4 ... I'm assuming that's the date. And so if you have Joseph Smith hopping aboard a plane to travel to Europe to do missionary work, oops, you've pulled an anachronism. Same thing with vehicles. Joseph Smith did not have the combustion engine vehicle. He had horse and carriage. And so you have to factor that in when you're doing church history research. So likewise, with the Book of Mormon, we've already come across some anachronisms right at the very beginning. The second word, Nephi, anachronism. And we above part 2 in the introduction. And so this is not supposed to be where we go, oh, I knew this was a fraud, this is stupid. You've missed the whole point of what I just went over, is what they're actually trying to get across to us. There are prophecies that we need to pay attention to. There are revelations that we need to pay attention to. This is to all of us. And it has something to do with white supremacy and the threat of white supremacy. Therefore, I was taught somewhat in the learning of my father, in all the learning of my father. And we see what that is. We'll get to that when we get to verse 2. And having seen many afflictions in the course of my days, nevertheless, having been highly favored of the Lord in all my days, yea, having had a great knowledge of the goodness and the mysteries of God. Now, don't put your biased definition here. Mysteries refers to temple initiations. And so, yes, we've all been aware of that with this church. We go to the temple and we go through the initiatories. That's what they are. Don't put in Brigham Young's endowment into this. Stop with the initiatories. Stop before you go into the final booth with the magic underwear. Don't go there. That's Brigham Young. Stick to what Joseph Smith knew. Stick to the ancients. Mysteries are just the washing and anointing. And I've gone over with you before about the origins of the word from Greek. Mysterion is an initiate, and sacred and secret being of the same origin root, etc. And so these are the things that you need to know when you're reading over this. You need to know the correct definition being used by the author. You can't impose modern definitions onto the past, and because that'll screw you up. Therefore I make a record of the proceedings in my days. Yea, I make a record in the language of my father. Lechai. I don't pronounce that very well. I do better with Bach. Which consists of the learning of the Jews. So now you need to know what the learning of the Jews is, like I mentioned previously, concerning the Christ. Because it's a human, not a created, non-existent reality that cannot be comprehended by man, and that we can't even comprehend that we cannot comprehend, because he made it all up. And the language of the Egyptians. Now, that's important, because the Rosetta Stone was deciphered and published in 1822 by Jean Champollion. It was the learning of the Greeks on the Rosetta Stone with the language of the Egyptians. The Greeks imposed Greek onto the Egyptian in order to turn Egyptian into a readable text, imposing Greek onto it. Wow. How did I know that? And here you see Jews, and thus what period of Jews? We don't find out until verse 4. Pre-captivity Jews. Israelites. Paleo-Hebrew. Pre-Hebrew assimilation. Pre-Semitic Hebrew. And also Jewish mysticism is involved here, because we saw it in verse 1. And until you learn Jewish mysticism, you're not going to see how knowledge and mysteries apply to Jewish mysticism. And so, sure enough, I deciphered Paleo-Hebrew, and it does associate with Greek, but with Egyptian with different characters than Babylonian Semitic. That whole, dear God, the whole acronym theory is just wrong. I don't know why nobody fact-checked William Foxwell Albright. I did. It's atrocious. I don't know why everybody's perpetuating it. It's just wrong on so many levels. Every single point in that theory is just wrong. No, that's not an acronym. That's not the word for that picture. What are you doing? Oh my God. That's not the linear of that picture, etc. And so, Egyptians. We now know, because Joseph Smith told us, that this record was gold plates. The whole Book of Mormon. And we can assume that this was on gold plates as well. But gold is being made mention here with Egyptian. And So we already have Jewish mysticism, and yes, that has to do with the New Israelites in Vermont, the Christian religion of the Gentiles that the Smiths were a part of. But there was also another organization that Smith Sr. was a part of, and we know it because of the name of Hiram and the particular spelling of Hiram prior to 1826, which then the spelling was changed after 1826, except that it had to go back to the pre-spelling of 1826 during court filings. You have to use your actual birth name and the spelling of the birth name. And it is sort of bypassed in Wikipedia. It is not linked to him. But I saw that and I went, that's him. Why is it not? What's going on? Do they not see that's just because the spelling is different? Yes, there's Freemasonry. And not just any Freemasonry, not a generalized Freemasonry, a specific Freemasonry in regards to the York Rites with the Knights Templar as the highest rank. So we are going to also see not just Jewish mystical words and concepts, we are also going to see Freemasonry, York Rites, Knights Templar symbolism with wording. Solomon's Temple, for example. And so this is also known to us because we now know real church history, right? Because I'm the only one telling you all this. You're watching my videos to keep up, right? And so notice I said pre-1826, white supremacist threat to us here in America. Starting to get the picture? Not yet? Okay, let's keep going. And I know that the record which I make is true, and I make it with my own hand, and I make it according to my knowledge. For it came to pass in the commencement of the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah. Okay, so when was this? William Foxwell Albright is the right one this time. 597 BCE. So that has bearing on 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem, which was in the first year of the reign of Zedekiah, king of Judah, which means 4 CE. There is no 0 year. And thus, was there a sign that year? Where was that sign that year? And is it something similar to some other signs in our future? Yes. That's why I'm telling you this. That's why I'm pointing it out to you. So my father, Lehi, having dwelt at Jerusalem, see again, if he were actually translating, he wouldn't put Jerusalem unless he knew of the Bible for comparison, because he does Zenoch and Zenos, he does those characters. Why does he put Jerusalem, Lehi, and Nephi, which are incorrectly translated? all his days. And in that same year there came many prophets, prophesying unto the people that they must repent, or the great city, Jerusalem, must be destroyed. YouTube had a video on my home feed of the Nazis' plan to attack America, to invade America. So it wasn't just spreading throughout Europe and then into Russia. Yeah, they also planned to expand to America. I wonder if there was anybody like McCarthy who tried to resurrect the Nazi agenda against communism. Now, they have arrived. They did invade. Anyway, prophesying unto the people that they must repent, or the great city Jerusalem must be destroyed. And so, literal history, it did happen. It's Babylonian captivity. We know it happened. But we're seeing anachronisms here. That this isn't a translation from an ancient book, as it's claiming it is. So it's like a story masking the message. It's not a literal history. And their message is a warning to us about a threat of white supremacy, like Nazis. And a destruction of a city. Wherefore it came to pass that my father Lehi, as he went forth, prayed unto the Lord, yea, even with all his heart, in behalf of his people. And it came to pass that as he prayed unto the Lord, there came a pillar of fire, and dwelt upon a rock before him. Crystal ball, huh? And he saw and heard much, and because of the things which he saw and heard, he did quake and tremble exceedingly. So this can't happen. It defies the laws of physics. Don't force it. Don't say, well, science will one day figure it out. They keep changing. They'll eventually prove that this is literal history. And it came to pass that he returned to his own house at Jerusalem, and he cast himself upon his bed, being overcome with the Spirit and the things which he had seen. And so he's on his bed, overcome with the Spirit. He was carried away into a vision. Vision and dream are interchangeable. So he's having a dream. And in the dream, he saw the heavens opened. This is a linguistic tell to show a star date given in the signs in the heavens. And we know this because of the Joseph Smith translation. Signs in the heavens in the likeness of things on the earth. Revelation 12:1, Joseph Smith translation. And so he sees God sitting upon his throne. This is a sign in the heaven. This is not an actual God sitting on an actual throne. So now you need to know astronomy as understood during the 1830s or the ancients. And so God is Saturn, using the Romans. He's the father of Jupiter. And the throne is the constellation Ophiuchus. So Saturn is to be in Ophiuchus here, surrounded with numerous concourses of angels, stars, in the attitude of singing and praising their God. So yes, there are billions of stars up there. But constellations are designated by specific brighter stars that can be seen from Earth. And it's a certain number. It's not all of the billions forming an actual throne. And it came to pass that he saw one, so he's still seeing a sign in the heavens here. So he sees one descending out of the midst of heaven, and he beheld that his luster was above that of the sun at noonday. That's Amen. That's also Jupiter, who is the equivalent of Zeus in Greek, who is the equivalent in Paleo-Hebrew with Yah of the Semitic Hebrew pronunciation. So the Hebrew god Yah is the Greek god Zeus, who is the Roman god Jupiter. And they're all the Egyptian god Amen. Adamon-Diamen. And so he also sees 12 others following him, and their brightness did exceed that of the stars in the firmament. And so, as we already know, Nephi has his dream of the tree of life from Jewish mysticism, and is told that the Apostle John will write the book of Revelation talking about the latter days. And there they are. The signs in the heavens described in greater detail by John in Revelation chapter 12 and in chapter 19. Those are specific star dates. The one with God sitting on his throne and 12 followers as stars, that's from Revelation 12, verses 1, 2, and 5, because the Joseph Smith translation moves verse 5 to verse 3, and verse 3 is merged with 4. And here we see it in the Book of Mormon. That date is the 23rd of September 2017. China even knew about it. They made t-shirts, but they didn't know of any of the others, which is strange. You knew that one, but you didn't know the others? You left it wide open for me. As Monson died on the stars falling from the tail of the dragon one. As well as his birthday was on the first day of darkness. And so the one descending, being Jupiter, which, yes, 3rd Nephi chapter 11, verse 8. Jesus coming from outer space to Bountiful, where the temple is. That's Revelation 19. The star date given there is 8 April 2024, which is exactly to the day 2020 years from 8 April 4 CE, which is 600 years from the time Lehi left Jerusalem. All right here in the Book of Mormon. As we are told, it's a warning about a threat of white supremacy to destroy America. And we are given the latter day time period in which they will do this. And now we all know what it means because we're in it. We now know who the representation of the first year of Zedekiah, king of Judah, is. because that's 2017. The Puppet King of which nation? And where was that solar eclipse in April 4 CE? Russia. But 2024, it crosses America as the third day of darkness, with the first day of darkness in southern Illinois. All right here in our Book of Mormon. And so the one descending, Amen, gives Lehi a book about the destruction of Jerusalem. So you remember your Nephi, not Moroni, coming in a pillar of light to Joseph Smith. It says, here's an Egyptian gold plates about the destruction of America, the Book of Mormon. Remember, these had to be rewritten because Junior couldn't handle babysitting Martin Harris. And so I think that's sufficient for now. Gives you an idea of how you should have been studying your Book of Mormon. The things that you should have been researching. But the church has purposely kept you from doing so. And why? Why? So we'll close with Heber C. Kimball's account from Wikipedia under Freemasonry to show you why. Remember, Joseph Smith Sr. was a Master Mason in Canandaigua, New York in 1826, where William Morgan was working on a book about a threat to America in Canandaigua, New York. He was a York Rites Mason. He was of the Royal Arch Degree rank, rank number 7. And so he had a higher rank than Senior, but Senior is the Master Mason of the Lodge. And so because it's his lodge, he's in control and he gives the orders. But William Morgan is there working on the book and gets to 116 pages until he's discovered and has to be secreted out of the country, and somebody else takes over the publishing of the book. See, all of this is spoiler alerts because you haven't been watching my videos, haven't done the research because the church won't let you. So Heber C. Kimball, now that I've given you that information, took 18 years for Senior to become a Master Mason, by the way. 18 years. This is pre-1826. Things have changed because of what happened in 1826. They're a little more open to take anybody because of the loss of temples and the shame and the fear of the public towards all things Freemasonry because of that event in 1826. And so it says, in 1823, Kimball received the 3 craft degrees of Freemasonry. 1 year, huh? It took Smith Sr. 18 years, and Heber C. Kimball does it in 1 year, according to his journal, which his journal actually has some different information than the Wikipedia page here. But nonetheless, it's the same. He does claim 3 craft degrees in 1823. And gives us Victor Flats, Ontario County, New York. Well, that's Scottish Rites territory, not York Rites territory. Again, they did things differently pre-1826. So the next year, in 1824, he sends a petition to the chapter at Canandaigua, New York, where Joseph Smith Sr. is the Master Mason, but has no mention here. So this is his journal. You'll see why he doesn't mention Joseph Smith Sr. And he's petitioning, so he's become Master Mason in 1 year. Now he's petitioning York Rites, not Scottish Rites, to be advanced to the degree, which is not really a degree, that's Scottish Rites, which is kind of a oopsie, the rank of Royal Ark Masonry, which is York Rites, not Scottish Rites. They have a whole different naming for each degree up to 32. 33 is the honorary degree. Royal Ark is the one William Morgan had. See what's going on here? See what he's revealing to us? His petition was accepted. Oh. So he was welcomed into the church because the Smiths already knew him? Why is that not mentioned in any of our church history documents? Why does he not mention Smith Sr.? What's going on? Although, here it is. Here's why. As he reported, anti-Masons had burned down the chapter building in Canandaigua. Oops, they didn't. They burned it down, yes, but the records remained. That's how we know Joseph Smith Sr. was a Master Mason there. Oops. Oops. And so, yes, who's the white supremacist threat to America? Heber C. Kimball. And who did he bring with him? Brigham Young. Now, do you understand why they are all about inverted pentagrams of Lucifer? Which is an anachronism, by the way. Again, another one. Because 2 Nephi 24, verse 12, How art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? That comes from the 1769 King James Version of the Bible, but also it originates from the Latin Vulgate around 400 CE. It's not in your Hebrew text, not in the Dead Sea Scrolls, which are considered to be the oldest known creation of texts, which is during the Roman period, as I've been telling you. The Bible has anachronisms that support the Dead Sea Scrolls being the origin of our Bible and the Torah, which are apocalyptic literature. So, this is why I do the videos that I do for you guys. And it's all from studying my Book of Mormon.